everybody, and welcome back to the HerStory TV and the HerStory Podcast. This is Gertrude Butcher here in beautiful Melbourne, Australia. And today I am graced with the presence of yet another fascinating young woman. Welcome to our tribe. Before I get started, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea, and community. We pay our respect to their elders, past, present, and emerging, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. I also extend that respect to my ancestors, my mother, my father, my grandparents, and all those who came before me in Africa. So this is a traditional acknowledgement of country. A lot of you who know me, I'm normally based in Wellington, New Zealand, but I'm now here in Melbourne, Australia. And it's always important to acknowledge the land you stand on. I feel really privileged to be able to broadcast from here every single day and share these amazing stories of women from all over the world. So, my next guest, please introduce yourself, tell us your full name, where you're based, how old you are, and share your story with us today.
Hello, my name's Josie Proffit. I'm based in Springville, Utah. I'm almost 30 years old. I'm 29 right now. And my story to share is the struggle that I had at the height of COVID and how I went through a transformation through it all. I had an experience where I lost my mental and physical health and regained it and continue to strive to become stronger in those ways. So my story really is how surviving major life transition while navigating the pandemic has transformed me. So I want to talk about how I was in school getting my master's degree, and I was also pregnant. This was right when the pandemic started. And I remember having to ride the train up to campus every day, about almost an hour ride. And I remember holding back growing up as I was newly pregnant and experiencing morning sickness. And a few days later, after experiencing this for a while, I got a notification from my school saying that I didn't have to come to campus anymore because the pandemic was hitting. And I don't mean to lessen the effects of the pandemic at all. But at that moment, I didn't realize the effect it would have on me. I was just relieved that I wouldn't have to ride the train and feel sick and that I could do everything from home. But little did I know how intensely the pandemic would actually affect me. So, if we were to kind of back out a little bit, I have had hormonal issues since as long as I can remember. When I was 16 years old, I went to the doctor and was wondering why I hadn't had my period. And he told me it was because I was an active athlete, that everything was fine. I had nothing to worry about. But deep down, I knew something was wrong, something was off. Back then, there wasn't really much out there on the internet with the, dial-up connection. I didn't really know how to look up information, so I just assumed that I was going to have to deal with my symptoms of fatigue, just brain fog, not feeling right, even from the age of 16. And that's when I did get my period, and really from then on, I've had hormonal issues. So, long story short, if we zoom back forward to the time of COVID, I was pregnant right at the beginning of the pandemic. And at that time, I kind of had this attitude of I can do it all. I'd grown up kind of with the type A personality, feeling like I earned my worth through achievement. So I was not only pregnant, but I was getting my master's degree in educational psychology. I was entering an internship. My husband was graduating from college, and we had a lot going on. So, through all of that, I gradually started having more and more symptoms that really were the signs of my hormonal issues that had never gone away. Back when I had been having those issues when I was young, I eventually got diagnosed with what's called polycystic ovarian syndrome. So I was, 20 when I was diagnosed with what's called PCOS. And along with that came diabetes, pretty much a trajectory of long-term ill health. And the only solutions the doctors had for me were to take birth control, SSRIs, all sorts of medications for the rest of my life. And I'd kind of been doing that and up until this pregnancy. Um, and so here I was during COVID. The world started to become more and more chaotic. And I realized my internal world was also becoming more and more chaotic. Um, During my pregnancy, I had that extreme nausea that I talked about. I was diagnosed with gestational diabetes. I ended up having too much amniotic fluid, and it was really, I hated it. I thought, how do people do this? How do they endure pregnancy and have multiple kids? Um, it was a really, really hard time for me to be pregnant on top of school, the internship, supporting my husband, financial struggles, everything else. So, if we kind of zoom forward, I had a really, really tough labor. Um, I had back labor for hours and hours, but I did it. I gave birth, my baby was born, and, despite having to get COVID tested, with the long thing down my nose during labor, having to wear a mask during labor, it was really kind of I think, a unique experience of giving birth, something that maybe a lot of other people will never experience. It was a scary time of, is my baby gonna get sick? Am I gonna get sick here in the hospital even? Um, so she was born, and my baby was not crying when she was born. She had to be resuscitated. And it was a miracle also that she could breastfeed since she had some really intense lip and tongue ties. So, what I'm trying to say is adjusting to being a mom was such a learning curve. I had no idea how hard it would be. Um, and so because of COVID, there wasn't really much help for me postpartum because everyone was in lockdown. So this was August of 2020. And I didn't want to get COVID. I didn't want to risk exposing my newborn. So even though a couple family members had offered to come help postpartum, I turned them down. Also thinking, I can do this myself. I'm a strong person, that kind of type A personality, like I talked about. Um, but that really got in my way, this attitude of I can do it all. So I had received a second-degree tear from giving birth, but I remember just a few weeks after going and lifting weights at the gym. So part of me being a clinical mental health counselor, I've realized that I have a lot of past emotional issues, past trauma that really impacted the way that I behaved postpartum of, no, I can do this. I'm superwoman. I don't need to recover. So instead of sitting and resting at home, I was busy doing chores. And I can't blame myself too much though, because I really was in a state of survival mode. The world was in chaos with so much fear, people dying from COVID. My personal life was fraught with instability, living in a busy city away from family. My husband ended up getting laid off from work because of the pandemic. So, in my spare time, instead of bonding with my baby, I was busy worrying about finances, how to keep up with my classes, and really counting down the 6 weeks that I had until I had to go back to my internship job. Um, and, I could have asked for more help probably, but there was also this aspect of I'm kind of shy. I don't want to bug people, which, now I realize also relates back to my childhood and feeling maybe like I'm a burden if I need people. Um, uh, so, in other words, motherhood really does change everything. There's so many quotes out there that say that, and it's so true because the something that had to give throughout all of this. I mean, you can only go so long without something breaking, and I really did end up breaking. I crashed. The stress of me being up all night with my baby, breastfeeding constantly, um, I really just lost my all my energy mentally and physically, and I kind of had no will to live. I just had no motivation. I just was exhausted. And I kept thinking, I'm a clinical mental health counselor pretty much at this point. I should be the last one struggling with this. But it really was so real and so dark. So I struggled like this for months, trying to find the will to continue with my school and work responsibilities. I was on autopilot, and my baby really didn't get the holding and connection that she needed from me. And I realized something had to be done. So I searched and searched for solutions, which leads me to kind of where I'm at today with my business and helping others.
You have been to hell and back. What an amazing story. I was fortunate to fly to Australia in June to be with my daughter who was having her first baby. And it was such a privilege to be here to help her with the baby. We were in isolation, we were in lockdown. But you're telling me you managed to do all of this by yourself with no help. That is just absolutely incredible. Now, if you could go back to the younger you, the world has changed now. So many young women are juggling this fine line. Do I ask for help? Do I do it myself? If you could go back and give advice to that young woman who was getting ready to have her baby, what 3 nuggets of wisdom would you give her based on what you've learned so far?
The first thing that comes to mind is the obvious. It's okay to ask for help. You don't have to be superwoman. And the importance, I think the second nugget I would say is postpartum recovery really impacts the rest of your life. The way you recover from other pregnancies, from other births. And so this isn't just a short-term effect here. This is a long-term effect. It's worth it to take that time to heal. And I think the third thing I would the advice I would give is to get some professional help. I mean, I was thinking, I'm a counselor, I don't need this, but to be able to turn to someone for that help and support, that really one-on-one personal support would have been so helpful to identify these habits of me feeling I had to do it all myself, and how that really does go back to childhood, and how we can kind of stop these patterns from reoccurring, not just with this specific situation, but throughout my life, potentially.
That is so true. Now, most women experience trauma early in their lives, and we suppress it, we keep going, and then later on in life it manifests, right? You were forced to face that because of the pandemic and the situation you were in. Am I correct?
Correct.
What did you do to go back and try and heal that past trauma?
That really is the core of the work that I do with clients. So what I've done is I've imagined, just as you kind of asked me now, imagine my current self going back into the past scenarios where I felt maybe unheard, unseen, or maybe like pressure was put upon me, or I had to realize it doesn't have to be big traumas. It can be times where I felt misunderstood, and going back now and imagining myself giving my younger self what she needed. Maybe it was just a hug. Maybe it was telling those around me, hey, this isn't right. She needs this, and giving her that love and support, or even removing her from certain situations and helping my younger self really let go of those burdens of me that she learned of, maybe I'm not good enough, I have to do it all. These types of core beliefs, really.
Yeah, our belief system can be changed. And it's really a change of habit that changes the belief. So it's a process. It's a process, and you kind of have to take it step by step.
Yeah.
So with mental health issues, especially, like I said again, the times we are now in, this situation could be permanent. We could be going in this state for the next 10 to 15 years. There's no telling really where the post-COVID world will look like or what it will be like. And it's just fascinating that women are finding ways to create businesses. What inspired you to start your business? Was it a call from a friend? Did you just notice that there were more women who were struggling? What was the inspiration for your business?
Yeah, so I work as a clinical mental health counselor now, just seeing any clients who want to come in for general issues, anxiety, depression. But I would say 99% of my clients are women around my age who are struggling postpartum, who come in for a mental issue, but it's actually hormonal. They find out they might have thyroid issues from our discussions, or their cycle is off. And so I realized there's more that needs to be addressed here. There's kind of this people are being missed. Just there isn't as much communication between providers as there would ideally be. And so I really saw this place for me to provide women with kind of a more well-rounded, holistic health resource. So I like to say that I am empowering women psychologically, but also physiologically, really helping women know how to work with their cycles. We're not like men. We don't just go, go, go all the time. We are cyclical beings. We need to rest at certain times of our cycle and work at other times. And so it's been really cool to kind of take a more holistic approach, combining the mental health aspect and kind of the physical hormonal aspect, which are really one and the same in so many ways.
Wow. Yeah, and it's us understanding how our bodies function that we can function more optimally and creatively too, right?
Yeah.
I did find the form that you filled out. It was hidden somewhere in the system. There was a phrase you talk about the freeze nervous system state that's caused by the pandemic. Can you explain that and how people can come out of that?
Sure. Yeah. And so anyone can get into that freeze state. As you probably heard, there's the fight, flight, or freeze nervous system states when there's any form of stress. That's how our body reacts. But women especially are more prone to the freeze state because we are wired to be aware of those around us. We're wired to think of our communities. So it can be easy for us to become more overwhelmed by stressors and come into a place of freeze or shutdown. Um, and so that's really where I found myself in the story I was saying. I was in this deep, deep, deep state of freeze. And that can look like depression. And so ways to come out of that are really one is social interaction, which is so hard during the pandemic, but even small ways, seeing people's faces, even online, um, being able to do things in person as much as you feel comfortable. So I have recently gotten into jujitsu. That is a great way to come out of freeze because it actually activates the fight side of our nervous system and helps kind of activate that stuck energy. Other ways to come out of freeze are the work I was mentioning earlier, kind of working with younger parts of ourselves or even just current parts that may feel unsafe, getting to know those parts, understanding why do you feel the need to go into freeze? How can I support you right now? And really developing this relationship with ourselves of there are no bad parts. Freeze is not a bad thing. We just need to understand and have compassion for that part of ourselves that feels unsafe and maybe offer that part of ourselves ways to feel safe, which can be breath work, meditation, things like that.
Fantastic. You mentioned a book by Gabon Mate, When the Body Says No. Our bodies have a way of stopping us when we keep going and we keep pushing and pushing and pushing. I ended up collapsing with congestive heart failure due to hypertension and stress while on holiday in a rice field in Indonesia, in Bali. Talk a little bit about that and how we need to listen to our bodies when they are giving us these indicators to slow down.
Yes. Oh, it's such a hard thing, especially in our modern society where we're rewarded for being go, 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 always on the clock, always on our phones, responding to any text, email. We really don't get a break from work unless we are very, very conscious. And it's true. So our emotional stress from all of these things impacts the body. Gabor Mate uses the phrase, it kind of eats away at our physiological systems. So learning to rest, learning to slow down is really important. But I think it really goes back to, why are we feeling this need to push ourselves? And maybe it goes back to, that past trauma, ways that we were raised. Maybe we didn't feel safe growing up, and it's a way to feel safe is always being busy.
Okay, so my last question for you is this. If time was an illusion and I could take you into your future, you're now 100 years old, you're sitting on your porch with your children, your grandchildren, your dogs, and your cats, and you're reflecting back on your life and how you're living it now. What would you say to that older you, this wise woman who's led you to that point?
What would I say to my older self? Wow. I think I would just feel, I'm honestly getting kind of emotional right now thinking about that. I would just be full of gratitude. I think that feeling of gratitude is something that is so powerful, but yet so common, something we talk about all the time. I would thank her for being there, for supporting me, for being that person who has never left, who will always be there. Yeah, feeling a lot in my heart right now.
I love that. And you answered that so beautifully, because this is something I try and remind women, that all the wisdom is in us. Our future selves are there waiting for us to catch up with her. So if you're struggling with anything right now in your life, be still, go into meditation, just drop deep into who you really are. You already have all the answers. And one day you'll meet her when you're 100 or 120. And like you said, be grateful that she led you there. Beautiful way to end the segment. Thank you so much, Josie. Please continue what you're doing. I've got your website playing at the bottom of the screen. So if anybody wants to get in touch with you, I noticed you're on Instagram, you're on TikTok. Please reach out, ladies. Reach out if you need help. Psychological support is nothing to be ashamed of. We're going through very, very strange and difficult times right now. So reach out and get the help that you need. Josie, don't go away. I want to catch up with you for a minute before you go. I'll be back again tomorrow, everybody, when I interview yet another fascinating and amazing woman. In the meantime, have a good day, morning, or evening, wherever you are in the world, and bye for now.